Hello, I'm Rick with Stellar Living, and today we're going to cover the book of Ecclesiastes Chapter 1. So, to start off, verse 1 reads this way: "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem." Now, it is believed that the book of Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon, apparent here as we read verse 1. Verse 2 goes on to say, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Here we see now the author is calling themselves the preacher. We know King Solomon was a wise man, however, we don't have any record of him being a preacher. There's also belief that part of Ecclesiastes was written by another person in a later period. Now, the Hebrew term or the word preacher is kohelet, which also means assembler or gatherer. It is possible that an author is writing about the experiences of King Solomon. So let's take a look at the word vanity. Modern definition of the word vanity is excessive pride in one's own appearance. Another meaning is the quality of being worthless or futile. The Hebrew word for vanity is hevel, which refers to breath or vapor. Here, the author is referring to life like it is a puff of smoke or the cloud of steam that comes from hot breath on a cold morning. See, life is like that. It is elusive. It can slip away from your grasp. Psalms 39:5 says, "Surely every man at his best is a mere breath." Our author is trying to illustrate how fragile life can be and how meaningless life is without God. The Apostle James describes life as a mist that appears for a little time, then vanishes. Now going on to verse 3, it says, "What advantage does man have in all his work which he does under the sun?" For the next few verses, the author is elaborating his theme that the human effort appears to be without benefit or purpose. If we think about our jobs and or our routine, life sometimes can feel repetitive. We wake up early, go to a job we may or may not like. We get off of work and take care of our daily tasks. If we have children, we have to pick them up from school, take them to practice. If they have a game, we have to support them by going to the game. We have to cook dinner, then get everybody ready for bed so we can wake up and do it all over again. Here, the author is asking, what advantage do we have in all these things? And then verse 4 reads on, "A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever." Here, the author is trying to illustrate how life can pass you by when you look at life from strictly a worldly view. When we see only the things of the flesh, we miss viewing life from the glory of God and the things of heaven. Verse 5 goes on to say, "Also the sun rises and the sun sets, and hastening to its place, it rises there again." Again, our author is illustrating how repetitive life can be and even seem pointless. The sun goes around and around without ever actually ending up going anywhere. Day after day, it travels for so long, but does not progress in its journey. Verse 6, "Blowing towards the south, then turning towards the north, the wind continues swirling along, and on its circular courses the wind returns." So the wind shows us the same thing. It fails to accomplish anything as it ends up right where it started. For all of its movement, like the sun, it never makes any progress. Verse 7 reads on, "The rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again." So the work of the water seems just as fruitless. The rivers flow into the sea, but the sea is not full. Through these three verses, the author is really trying to illustrate how we labor our lives away. Our days are busy and tireless, but we don't really arrive to any particular destination. Verse 8 reads on, "All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing." Life is so wearisome and tiring that it's hard to put into words. There's always one more work day, one more payment, one more appointment. Even at retirement, our work does not end. The preacher then points out how our eyes are never satisfied with what it sees, or our ears are never filled with what it hears. We're so occupied with things to see. We have Netflix, Hulu, YouTube. There's video games. We have our favorite sports teams, favorite TV shows, news stations, magazines, social media. The list goes on and on and on. But no matter what we see or hear, we're always looking for the next experience. Our eyes are never satisfied, and our ears are never content with what we hear. Verse 9 reads on, "That which has been done is that which will be done." So there is nothing new under the sun. So think about the term history repeats itself. We see ourselves making the same choices or mistakes over and over. Every 4 years we have a new president, yet it seems the state of our country gets worse and worse. Policies change, views change, but the circumstances remain the same. Verse 10 reads on, "Is there anything which one might say, 'See, this is new. Already it has existed for ages which were before us'?" Here the author considers the possibility of something new, but then quickly denies it. A good illustration of verse 10 would be the story of Christopher Columbus. Every child in school is taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. We have to consider the journeys of Leif Erikson, who reached the New World 400 years before him, or the indigenous people who had already established means of commerce well before Christopher Columbus's arrival. Verse 11, there's no remembrance of early things and also of later things which will occur. There will be no remembrance among those who will come later still. While many things seem to be new, it is only because we have forgotten things of the past. While history tells us the United States is the first great nation of North America, there were people here long before us, thousands of years ago. The Anasazi people built a great city in New Mexico's Chaco Canyon with 5-story buildings containing hundreds of rooms thousands of years ago. Verse 12 reads on, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem. The first 11 verses were a series of examples drawn from life experience to prove how life can be meaningless. It is possible that this was written from a final editor who referred to the preacher in third person. Here our author speaks in first person, telling us who he is, the King of Israel. Verse 13, and I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task to which God has given to the sons of man to be afflicted with. Some Bible versions use the term, I applied my heart to seek and search by wisdom. Here Solomon is professing his search for a meaning to life beyond the limits of the earth. As he uses the term under heaven as opposed to under the sun, we can rest assured Solomon is sincere in his quest, as we refer to 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9. As Solomon has just become king of Israel, God says, ask what you wish me to give you. Solomon asked for an understanding heart to judge God's people and to discern between good and evil. This pleases the Lord, and God tells Solomon in verse 12, behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there shall be no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. Solomon then expresses how difficult and wearisome it can be trying to find a meaning to life. Verse 14, I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. Here the preacher uses the word vanity again to describe how quickly life passes us by when focused strictly on the things of this earth. He then uses the term striving after the wind to describe the futility of life. Verse 15, what is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Solomon comes to the conclusion that there are some things in life we cannot fix. There will always be wrongdoing in the workplace, conflicts in church, corruption in high places, and even our own personal difficulties. On the second part of this verse, it is possible the preacher is saying we cannot count what we do not have, or what is missing from life is beyond measure or comprehension. Verse 16, I said to myself, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who are over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Solomon is not bragging about his wisdom, but is stating biblical fact. Solomon was the wisest man who had ever lived, making him the perfect candidate to figure out the meaning of life. Verse 17, and I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I realized this is also striving after the wind. Again, Solomon speaks about his journey for wisdom, then resorts to know madness and folly in his search for meaning. Solomon is not speaking of insanity, but rather the foolishness of immorality or a life of sin, concluding that this too is meaningless. Verse 18, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. A good analogy to describe this verse would be a child who wishes to be grown and know of the things of his parents are speaking about. Then as we grow older, we wish we could go back to the innocence of being a child. Now this wraps up chapter 1, and we will be back with chapter 2 in 1 week. Thank you for watching.